So, hello and welcome to TechFunnel.com's interview series for Women's History Month. My name is Danny White, and today we have joining us Theodora Lau. Theodora is a founder, speaker, writer, innovator, and startup advisor. Her work seeks to spark innovation in the public and private sectors for the benefits of 50-plus cohorts. As the founder of Unconventional Ventures, Theodora focuses on developing and growing an ecosystem of financial institutions, corporates, entrepreneurs, and venture capitalists to better address the unmet needs of consumers with keen interest in women and minority founders. As part of her work, she regularly mentors fintech and health tech startups and fosters a growing partner portfolio. She was recently recognized as LinkedIn's top voice for economy and finance in 2017, top fintech, digital transformation, and AI influencer by Analytica. Theodora, thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So tell us a little bit about your background and how you navigate life as a successful innovator and speaker in the financial sector.
So it's an interesting question. It wasn't a straight road, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
So I was born and raised in Hong Kong, spent 18 years of my life there.
Okay.
And then I had my family moved to New York, and I did my undergrad as a chemical engineer. So that was my first foray of, oh my goodness, where are the women?
Yeah.
It was quite fascinating. And then, make a long story short, I moved around a little bit, settled in DC about 20 years ago, and I decided that I wanted to do something different. So I went ahead and did a master's degree and switched over to do IT systems implementation, a lot of tech work, basically looking at how do we leverage customer data and how do we leverage systems, if you will, to create a better customer experience. And so I did a lot of years in telecom, from the old days with landline and all the way to different varieties of mobile, MVNO, did some work with cable as well, and then high-speed internet, and all of that, different flavors. Did mostly back-end billing, CRM, and then the front-end customer experience pieces. And then life happens. I had kids, and I had one child, and I worked a little bit part-time at home, or tried to. And that was my second revelation. Oh my goodness, it is quite different life as I imagined it here versus the life I was used to in Hong Kong, where help was always readily available.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so in here I'm like, okay, it's really expensive. It's about 4 times as much to get help in the US compared to Hong Kong. And also it's very hard to find. It's not even like a matter of, giving people money. It's really, really hard to find.
Yeah.
And I had my second child, and shortly thereafter I said, I needed to go back to work full time. And it was very, very hard transitioning. You face all kinds of things, things that you read about, but you thought it would never happen to you, right?
Right. Yeah.
People would ask, the first question they always ask is, oh my God, are you going to be able to travel now that you have little ones?
So what was your response to that type of question?
I said, of course, it's up to me to manage, right? It's not your concern. If I say I can do it, I can do it.
Right.
And that was when I felt the bias, right? That creeped in, if you will. Nobody asked my husband if he could travel. We did very, very similar line of work. And, he spent a week and off he went. And nobody treated him differently. But as for me, because the fact that, I'm a mother, I had 2 children. The first question is, can you actually do your job?
Right.
Like, and then, other things like, are you still going to be as flexible? All of the assumptions that people make on your behalf. And it was quite hard. And then the pay cut itself, I'd say the struggle is real. And so I almost felt like if it's proportional to the number of children that you have. So it took me a while, and I ended up, decided that I wanted startup life. So I joined a group of people I used to work with. They started a health tech startup in New York. And I did some work with them. And then chance and happens, I guess, an old colleague of mine was at a nonprofit in DC, and he's actually still there. And he said, "Would you like to join us?" And I didn't even think twice. I had my children late. We were just talking about that this morning, like the whole assumption, social norm, if you will, that, women should get married, have children in 20s and all of that. I threw that out a long time ago. I had my kids later in life. I think, in retrospect, I got more life experiences, when I came back to work. And so I started my life, a nonprofit looking at financial technology innovation for older people. Essentially similar to a lot of things I used to do is how do we leverage technology to do something good for consumers? And then that was me for quite a while. And then I decided that I wanted to have my own voice, have my own brand. And I started the company, Unconventional Ventures. And I had a partner out west. He used to run innovation for Santander. And our whole reason why we wanted to call it Unconventional Ventures is because in many ways you look at it as not conventional, right? I didn't come from banking. I came from telecom, although there's a lot of similarities between the two verticals. And we are very interested in two themes in particular. One is around longevity and inclusion, right? Inclusion from a perspective of age and gender, social demographic circles, education, all of that. And then the other line that we're very interested in is how do we help make banking better? So those are not your typical, let's run after the next shiny toy, if you will. Because throughout my years, I always got female entrepreneurs coming to me and say, "Hey, Theo, I need help getting people to understand what my company is doing, or I need access to capital." Because it's just different circles. So that's where we are.
Very cool. Very, very interesting journey. So what do you think the impact of having more women in the financial sector or the telecom sector, as you come from, and even just the technology sector in general, could have on the economy, the global economy?
I think that the impact is immense, right? And there's no lack of study out there to say. I think fundamentally you need to look at what is financial services about, right? Or telecom or any service industry is to provide service to a broad spectrum of society. The society doesn't include just men. It doesn't include just people living on the coast. It doesn't include certain ethnicity. The society is diverse, right? By nature, is half women, half men, is made up of people from different backgrounds, that speak different languages with different skill sets. So if you are in an industry that is providing services to that diverse group of people, then the question I have is, if you limit your group and the team that you work to just a small sliver of the demographics, then how well-rounded is your solution? How much can you actually understand what people are going through?
Okay, so how do you feel the impact of more women around the world becoming more financially independent is having on families, on schools, on government, on the economy overall?
All of the above and more. It's like, I wrote about it earlier this month. It's like peeling an onion. There are so many layers and it hurts if you come to think of it. So it starts young. It starts when the girls are at home, or kids, regardless of gender, is how are the parents treating them? Do the parents already have some sort of unconscious bias, if you will? Look at Lego. When I was growing up, I love Legos. I love puzzles. I didn't play with dolls or anything. But Legos was Legos. And now you look at Legos nowadays, there are girl Legos and boy Legos. There are pink Legos and blue Legos. Well, my daughter doesn't necessarily always like the pink and the purple. She wants the regular one, right? So why are we as a society already defining what kids should play with when they're little? It gives them access to everything. Or things like Oh, mommy's not good at math. If you need help with your math homework, go to daddy. Things like that. It reinforces the fact that, women are better at certain things and not as good at certain things. So that starts from the home, but it goes beyond, right? And one of the reasons why I really wanted to go back to work full time, one is I was bored, but two is I want the kids to know that it's okay for mommy to work. When I grew up, in my very, very early days, my dad was still going to school, and obviously we had help, but it was okay for mom and dad to switch roles. And then later on, my mom got busier, and so my dad, cooked dinner at home, and for me, it's like okay, it's perfectly okay. I still remember I went to an all-girls Catholic school. And in my first grade, in one of the homework assignments, there was a picture of someone cooking dinner. And it was a fill in the blanks matching with the picture. And I said, father. I wrote father because that was what happened in my house when I was in first grade. And I got a big red cross on my homework. The teacher was like, no, that's not right. As a mother, I said, not in my house. My mom doesn't cook. My dad makes dinner. Yeah. And it was upsetting, right? So we have all of these social norms of what a woman is supposed to do, what a mother is supposed to do. And if we keep reinforcing that as a society, we'll never break out the cycle. But it also goes beyond that, right? It extends from the home to businesses, to companies, to the culture of the company. Are we having all the social events during office hours, or are we doing happy hours after work? If you're doing happy hours after work, I would say you're already excluding parents. Doesn't matter if it's men or women, parents, because parents, a lot of times they have things. So how about we add variety to what you're doing? Or like in a lot of consulting companies, for example, they'll have golf outings. Well, things don't happen really in the office. Things happen in golf courses, right? So deals get signed in golf courses and in dinners. Well, what if people don't have the flexibility in their calendar to attend all of these things? Does that mean that they already are lacking access to the network? That is important for their career trajectory, right? Yes, so same thing as I spend a lot of time on social media because that's the way I get my message out. Well, I was lucky because my kids are a little older now and I have flexibility and my husband works from home and we trade roles. But not everyone has that, right? Absolutely. So a lot of times conference organizers, they look for speakers based on what they see on LinkedIn, based on what they see on Twitter, or based on what they see people writing stuff. Well, what if you don't have time to do those things, to get yourself out there? That doesn't mean you're not a good thought leader, a good speaker. It just means you just don't have the time. So it also needs to balance with the spouse, right? Women, unfortunately, still bear a lot of the caregiving responsibilities, and not just with children, also with their aging parents. And we're getting older. We have more multi-gen living, together, or close proximity, if you will. Guess who's going to go take care of grandma? The mother is. Right? It's the mother. It's the daughter. So a lot of these, until we can start changing within ourselves as well as a culture from a society perspective, until we can actually create the proper support structure from like providing affordable childcare to like being flexible in the workplace, it's going to be really, really hard because you are going to lose people halfway.
Absolutely. So the New York Times released an article a couple of weeks ago on how progress has stalled for women who are looking to gain a seat at the proverbial table. What do you think? How do you think that progress can be stimulated and women can be re-engaged in that corporate process and even in that startup process? Still today, even in 2019, there are women who get looked over for positions that they are well qualified for. They have the same level of experience, same level of education as their male colleagues. Or how do you think people and CEOs can stimulate a conversation around that and then just re-engage people towards action in that process?
Well, I don't want to sound doom and gloom, but according to the World Economic Forum, it's going to take 165 years. So we better have patience. Lots of patience. And if we don't, then get off our ass and do something about it. It's multifold, right? Again, I think from a company perspective, it starts from the top.
Mm-hmm.
There was a couple of weeks ago, there was an article that was talking about a bank in the UK that they are thinking about reversing the flexible work arrangement because they felt that it's better if all the 3,000 employees all sit in the office at the same time together. Well, when you start doing that, what are you excluding? Or who are you excluding? You're excluding the people that have personal responsibilities, that have to drop off children in different hours, that, I can't even remember how many times my kids have snow days. I have to stay at home, or one of them gets sick. You need to take them to the doctor. I mean, life happens, right?
Absolutely.
And so, that needs to start from the top. And the leadership has to have not just empathy, but understanding on, you just don't, it's not just about FaceTime, right? It's about the work that the person produces. And, at this day and age with all the technology, there are a lot of things you can do remotely. So it starts with that. It also starts with, again, creating that culture, if you will, that we need more women up top, and it's okay to see more women up top. Case in point, PwC released a report recently about the number of women that are serving on boards and the criteria that companies are using to pick members of the board. We have to do stuff like that, right? We have to say, okay, traditionally you always say that person has to have been a CEO for X number of years in order to even qualify for being on the board. Well, what are you doing then? Again, it's exclusionary process, right? Because most of the CEOs are male. And so inherently you are filtering out good candidates that have the skill sets, but not the title. And as we are working longer, we need to rethink all of that, right? We need to rethink, what does title mean? What does, going to school for a specific undergrad means when you're going to be working another 30, 40 years? What we learn when we are in the undergrad in the 20s doesn't apply when you're in your 30s and 40s, let alone 50 and 60. And we need to keep reinventing ourselves. And so look at the potential of the person, look at the skill sets, not just necessarily at the past, but look towards the future.
Absolutely. I was listening to this podcast just this morning about the founder and the co-founder of Hello Alfred. And they basically said the same thing, that they kept firing themselves because they started the company. They kept firing themselves from every role so that they could keep developing their skill sets and keep growing in the different roles that apply to a business in general. So definitely that's very interesting. How people will have to acknowledge that women are equally as capable of fulfilling certain roles, such as, chairman of the board or being a board member, even if they haven't been CEOs of companies or don't have that title. So very interesting insights. Because
they are CEO of the house, right? I mean, if you think about it, my life managing 2 young children with their own different personalities, different schedules, different demands and all of that. It's not just time management. It's also conflict resolution. It's a lot of things. And those same skill sets, I would say, apply to dealing with execs who oftentimes act like children.
Absolutely. Yeah, I would certainly agree with that. So what advice would you give to women who are looking to make progress and climb that proverbial corporate ladder, or even as you did, the startup ladder?
Be kind to yourself. I think that's first and foremost. Is what I tell people. I gave a talk last week on a similar topic on moving from corporate to entrepreneur life, and it applies if you're an entrepreneur. It applies if you're in corporate. You need to understand and be okay with the fact that you cannot have it all. I think there are a lot of talks about leaning in. It's been for a few years now, and I have my own thoughts about it. Just leaning in is good only if you have someone to lean back when you need to fall back, right? And so it goes back to it needs a village. If you just say, well, if you need to climb the corporate ladder, you need to lean in, then it's just putting all the pressure and responsibility on the woman. And if she doesn't succeed, then it's like, well, you're not leaning in enough. Well, guess what? If her husband travels all the time, if her husband doesn't want to take care of the kids, if you have other things you need to take care of the house and stuff, how much can she lean in?
How much can she? Yeah, that's a good question.
And I use an example I had last year. I was speaking at a women's forum in Boston. And of all the days in DC, that was the only one. We had a massive snowstorm. Oh, no. And my husband was out of town. And of course, my kids' schools were canceled. And I had to fly out 6:30 in the morning. And I'm like, okay, what am I going to do? So one day I'll try to make it back. So I had to call my neighbors to come with my kids to watch my kids at 6 o'clock in the morning. And then I had to arrange for a second set of neighbors to keep the kids entertained during the day. And then I had to have someone else watch them in the evening. And I was lucky. I was able to piecemeal all of that together. And so I was able to fly out, do what I wanted to do, and the kids were okay at home. Right. But think about what it took to maneuver, right? Not everyone had the flexibility. Not everyone had that support. And so it goes back to be kind to yourself. You cannot have it all, right? So it's okay to leave the house messy once in a while. It's okay to, drop some things once in a while. It's all right.
And I think that last point that you made, that you cannot have it all, I think it's a very true statement, but it's hard for some of us to actually believe it because we want to have it all. And I think we've been taught that we can have it all if we just do this or lean in, as the book has been written. But I think it's a very, very comforting and true statement that you can't have it all. And it's not necessary really to have it all.
It's okay to not have it all.
It's okay.
Exactly. I was brought up that a woman can have everything. I was brought up in a way that you can have your career, you can have children, you can have family, and the house will be beautiful.
Yeah. Well, sometimes that's not possible, actually.
A lot of times it's not possible. Yeah. Sure, if I have a team of nannies that run after the children, make sure they're all taken care of. If I have someone cooking for the house, running errands, if I have a housekeeper that cleans the house, if, right? But that's not reality life. And then you take a pause and then you look at a lot of the guys. They come to work, they're all dressed, they are, well rested. Well, guess what? Because I would make a guess, they have someone, i.e. their wife, taking care of a lot of the chores at home.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right. I don't have much time to sleep. I would love to sleep more, but I can't. By the time I put the kids down at 8:30, that's when the second quote unquote shift of my day starts. I have to get their lunch ready. I have to get all the stuff ready. And then I work, right? Yeah. Ideally, I wouldn't have to do that, but it's reality. So it's okay.
It's okay. Awesome. This has been an inspiring interview and very interesting insights you've shared, Theodora. I just want to thank you for joining us today and appreciate your time that you have shared with our audience. Guys, thanks for listening to this interview. For these and other interviews and topics, please visit techfunnel.com. You can connect with us on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Instagram, and subscribe to our weekly newsletter so you can stay up to date on everything that's happening in the industry.